Hello again. This is Dr. Gregory, and I would like to welcome you back to part 2 of my 4-part seminar presentation on functional isodynamics, applied exercise, and nutrition. In this part of our program, we will continue to explore how the various myths that have been sounded throughout the fitness world contribute to your overtraining, and further, how they can expose you to potential injury. Additionally, we will explain briefly just how such overtraining and even nutritional issues can impact your recovery. Now, I want to impress upon you just how important your recovery actually is to your overall program success. I will also clearly explain just what functional isodynamics, applied exercise and nutrition is. And in part 1, I reviewed some results from my initial programs. However, in part 2, I will review some current exercise programs and their fantastic results to answer the question, does it work? Or specifically, does functional isodynamics work? And I conclude this portion of the presentation with a brief overview of what does not work and why many existing exercise programs actually contribute to undermining your success. Overtraining, avoidance, or more to the point, we want to understand how this overtraining happens and how you can avoid this troublesome issue. Now, while most Americans would be well served to exercise more, and I'm sure you would readily agree, there is no need to work out for more than 45 minutes at a time. And as we progress through this presentation, you will see just how short your workouts can actually be. Notice, if you exercise effectively, your workouts should be even shorter. So just how short your workouts can be and still allow you to make notable changes, clearly within a year, but more accurately, just within 90 days. Well, that's what we're going to be talking about throughout the next several parts of our program. Obviously, getting your heart pumping and your body sweating with regular exercise does provide multiple benefits, but there is a cutoff point beyond which exercise can actually harm your body. Now, we looked a little bit about this in the previous program, about how it affected your heart. Well, cut. Let's go back here. Let me start over. 1, 2, 3. There is a cutoff point beyond which exercise can actually harm your body. And we looked into some of that in the previous program about how this exercise, marathon-type exercise, can affect your heart. Now, granted, I've just made a rather bold contradiction to what we hear as the vast majority of people in the fitness centers. Crap. Cut. 1, 2, 3. There is a cutoff point beyond which exercise can actually harm your body. Now, granted, this statement is a rather bold contradiction to the vast majority of the standard philosophies and the exercise doctrines that are spread around the fitness centers today, and that are always passed off as beneficial advice. But as you discovered in our previous segment, we looked at the marathon-type exercises and how they actually affected your heart. So please stay with me, and you will soon learn exactly why I have just made this contradictory statement. Now, a safer, more effective exercise system is shorter duration and higher intensity training, which consists of shorter bursts of intense force. Now, this is one very direct method by which you can avoid overtraining and all of the negative health consequences associated with it. Short duration and high intensity training maximizes the benefits to your heart. And as we previously identified, these shorter bursts of intense training actually optimize your all-important HGH, or that human growth hormone, the fitness hormone. And it helps you even normalize your insulin levels. So, to avoid overtraining, we want to keep these short bursts or duration of intense training to less than 45 minutes. And if you employ a jogging or running program, please seriously consider keeping your distance to under 20 miles per week and try to spread it over 2 and preferably 3 days each week. This will help minimize risk while maximizing your benefits. Now, please give extra attention to point 4. Allow your body to fully recover between workouts. This is critical. And as you will very soon discover, this just may be the one critical area that has previously compromised your exercise programs and prevented you from getting the results you desire. Also, give attention to the all too important post-workout meal, as this will help provide your body with the very nutrition that is essential for your recovery and the building of the future health that you want. So when you add in improper nourishment or undernourishment to an ongoing exercise program, exercising excessively or incorrectly, your entire program can backfire on your health in a number of ways. For example, the following can occur when you exercise too hard, too long, and or too often. Number one, your body can enter into a catabolic state. Essentially, this is where your body will consume its own muscle tissue. Sadly, this is most often the very muscle people are trying to develop by their exercise programs. Number two, exercising too hard and or too often can also cause excess cortisol to be released. Now, what we don't need is this excess stress hormone when we're trying to improve our health. This excess cortisol has the propensity to contribute to this very catabolic issue, as well as it can set the foundation for various chronic diseases. And number three, sadly, exercising too hard and or too long, too often can also contribute to the development of microscopic tears in the very muscle fibers that you are trying desperately to develop. These issues can easily be compounded with continued overtraining and improper or undernourishment conditions. Further, this may very well set the stage for the risk of other more serious injuries in the future. I didn't like that. Let me try number 3 again. 1, 2, 3. Number 3. Sadly, exercising too hard, too often, too long can also contribute to the development of microscopic tears in the very muscle fibers that you are trying desperately to develop. Now, these issues can easily be compounded with continued overtraining and improper or undernourishment. Further, this may very well set the stage for the risk of other more serious injuries in your future. And number 4, exercising too hard and or too often, and when compounded with inadequate nutrition, you can actually challenge or weaken your immune system. Number 5, a notable consequence to exercising, as we've described, that too hard, too long, too often, is that of insomnia. This issue is more often experienced and very sadly all too often ignored. Most people do not associate their insomnia with their excessive or extensive exercise training program. Further, most people do not factor in the effects of poor nutrition and how that also impacts their sleep patterns. Many people, however, find that they do need to work out early in the morning or at least early in the day to avoid some of the effects of insomnia. And our final point, number 6, it's worth repeating. With most people exercising in these extensive workouts, these marathon-type workouts, coupled with improper nutrition, all too many fitness enthusiasts are in a constant catabolic state. They just keep going to the gym, trying the latest fad programs, and remain discouraged because of their lack of notable results. Now, I believe that this is such a critical issue that before this seminar program is concluded, I will be revisiting this very subject to give you a more clearer perspective on how this catabolic issue comes about. Now, that being said, let's briefly discuss this issue of being undernourished. Now, there are many definitions. The act or process of nourishing or being nourished in the selection of foods, preparation of foods, ingestion, and the assimilation by the body. But number 3 makes it a little bit clearer. It's providing cellular level requirements. In other words, is the question you should be asking, are you providing your body with what your cells need? And further, providing these needs when they are required by the body, so that your body can generate the very results that you are actively trying to achieve. And of course, being undernourished is obviously, cut, 1, 2, 3. And of course, being undernourished is obviously just the opposite. Supplied with less than the minimum, for that growth factor. How about poorly supplied with vital elements or qualities? Number 3 is essentially straightforward. It is your inability to provide these much needed cellular requirements. Maybe we should change this to read, not providing the vital cellular requirements. So just what might some of these vital nutritional shortfalls be? Well, in reality, there are just too many deficiencies to list. This is because each person is subject to their own nutritional deficiencies based upon a whole host of interactive elements, such as a person's lifelong individual nutritional program, their past-present stress level, their age, their exercise routine, etc., etc. Now on your screen, you'll see some very fundamental and very widely recognized nutritional deficiencies that are very well documented. And sadly, these actually plague most people today. Now, when you add the additional stress of exercise, marathon exercises and such, and as previously noted, exercising too hard, too long, too often, these deficiencies become very conspicuous and very often troublesome. That is why we offer a full line of quality nutritional products that are specifically designed to support our clients so that they can achieve their desired fitness goals. And as I mentioned in my original introduction to this program, we are presently in the developmental phase of a new series of formulations that will certainly be of great benefit to all health enthusiasts. Now, just as proper training and proper nutrition are critical to your health and physical fitness, there is an equally important and very often overlooked element that also undermines the efforts of most fitness-oriented individuals, and which actually prevents many fitness enthusiasts from being successful in their various and often numerous attempts at their individual fitness goals. It is something that too many fitness enthusiasts don't fully understand. Recovery. The single word that very accurately describes by far a very major stumbling block to the success of many fitness enthusiasts. So just what is this science and biology about? What's going on with this recovery? Crap. Cut. 1, 2, 3. So, just what are some of the science and biology issues behind this major stumbling block known as recovery? Well, let's explore this issue by beginning with a very direct question. Why are we not recovered? Well, one of the reasons most people are not able to fully recover from their exercise programs is because we actually live the very myths that are passed off as science and biology. Just like that mythical saying that I have previously brought to your attention. Do you recall? Well, if you're not in the gym within 72 hours, you lose your strength. Can you imagine the countless number of hours people have spent in their fitness centers and gyms while trying to live up to just that one myth? Additionally, most people do not properly recover because they are working out to what I have previously identified as these guru programs, published in the monthly Musclehead magazines. Some even sprinkle with fairy dust to make them more appealing. You might recall from the first portion of this series, or maybe you have even been victimized by some of these hyped ideas. The 6 days of exercise with 1 day off, or the split routines that have you in the gym twice a day. So, what are the typical results from following this type of advice? Well, the results of trying to live up to these myths and desperately and repeatedly trying to implement these constantly changing programs subjects you to being frustrated and exhausted and therefore overtrained. But when you factor in poor or inadequate nutrition, remember that deficiency in all of those vital cellular requirements, the final results are you cannot adequately recover. Further, when you cannot recover, you cannot make progress. Hence, you don't see results in 90 days or in a year. That is why, sadly, all too many people have repeatedly tried a host of various exercise programs. Most people are not even in that 0.5% that have made any changes, even in that year, much less 90 days. Now, let's take a look at some basic biology to see if we can acquire a better understanding of this concept of recovery and why I believe it is so important. Let's start by going way back in history. Let's begin with Adam and Eve. Now you might ask, what does that have to do with you? Well, just like Adam and Eve, we have the same 650 muscles, depending on how you group them, and we have the same 187 joints and 206 bones. Further, we also have the same glands, organs, and tissues, and even the same fundamental hydration and nutritional needs. But what all of us don't have in common is that genetic stuff, the DNA. Our genes are different. That being established, each of us has limits to just what we can expect our exercise and nutritional programs to accomplish. However, all of us can make improvements in our health and our physicality. Even though each of us employs some form of exercise on a regular basis, and given each of us have some specific genetic barriers to our progress, we can improve in our overall health by recognizing the need and working to improve in this one additional area. Now, to get to that area, allow me to ask you this question. How many of you go to sleep every day? You might even ask, well, why do I ask that? Or why do you go to sleep every day? Well, when I'm in and out of the fitness centers and fitness programs of various types, I'm talking to people all the time, and I ask them this same question. How many of you go to sleep every day? And when I ask the question, the most common response is one that I'm sure you share. It's to recover from the daily grind, that mental fatigue and physical exhaustion. Basically, what I often hear is that people sleep so that they can recover from life and prepare themselves for the next day of life. Now, I want to complicate this simple question and answer with some very basic logic and reasoning. Do you recall this guru exercise program? Do you recall this from the first part of our seminar? Or maybe you have actually worked out to this or a very similar program, or you might know someone that has. So why would I bring this up when I'm talking about going to sleep? Better yet, what am I actually trying to say? Again, allow me to pose some simple logic and reasoning, and I'm going to pull this all together for you. Reflect for a moment on the previous exercise program, or better yet, reflect upon your current exercise program and ask yourself, can 60-year-old female diabetics use the same workout schedule as 20-year-old female athletes? In other words, is the program you're doing right now, will it work as efficiently for a 60-year-old diabetic as it does for you? Or, here's another question. Does the 35-year-old office executive and the 35-year-old construction worker employing the exact same exercise routine, do they recover at the same time? Do they make the same gains? You see, here's another perspective of this logic and reasoning when it comes to the endless number of myths and guru-generated exercise programs. Now, as you ponder these questions, let's revisit a concept that I introduced in our previous segment. Do you recall me presenting the question about going to the gym on day one and lifting a specific amount of weight, and then going to the gym on a subsequent time and lifting either the same or a greater or even a lesser amount of weight? Well, let's use that series of questions and see if we can apply some more logic and reasoning to better understand this concept of recovery and just how this question of sleep figures into it. So we're going to go with the typical Monday, Wednesday, Friday program. Now, as you view this diagram, let's just say that you go to the gym on Monday and lift 100 pounds for a total of 10 repetitions. Now, doing the math, as they say, you would have lifted a total of 1,000 pounds. Given that performance, there would be a specific duration of time, the actual time that you spent performing these repetitions, accompanied with a specific amount of intensity in order to lift this 100 pounds 10 times. Now, what happens when you go to the gym at the future date? Again, using the typical Monday, Wednesday, Friday routine, you take 48 hours off, you return to the gym to accomplish your next sequenced workout, only this time you lift 100 pounds 11 times for a total of 1,100 pounds lifted. Wow. Now ask yourself, while keeping the duration, in other words, the time you spent lifting that weight the same, was the intensity different? For anyone that has ever experienced what we are now illustrating, I'm sure that most of you would agree that that Wednesday workout was more intense. In other words, that 10th and 11th rep by far required more oomph, more effort on your part compared to getting that 10th rep up on Monday. So let's progress to the next workout and apply some more logic and reasoning. After another 48 hours away from the gym, we return on Friday. And maybe you have experienced something like this also. You know, where you go to the gym on a subsequent workout only to find that you actually lift less than your previous trip to the gym. Now, by less, I mean simply that you lifted either less weight or less reps. And many people experience this and they blow it off to things like, well, you know, I got things on my mind, or oh, I didn't sleep well last night, or oh, the baby kept me up, or, you know, I got a hard, whatever. You see, the bottom line is, in this example, you're still lifting 100 pounds, but your efforts in the gym only provided a resulting 9 reps, or you moved 900 pounds. Again, given that your duration or the time to lift this was the same as your previous trips to the gym, the real question that needs to be addressed is just how much intensity was employed on your Friday workout. Again, anyone that's gone to the gym and fitness centers and experienced this, they understand what I'm talking about. Most people would readily agree that that 9th rep on Friday was, by comparison to the previous 2 workouts, pretty intense. In other words, the intensity or force, that explosive force required by you to lift that weight, that 100 pounds on Friday, may very well have been a much greater intensity than you employed on your previous Monday and Wednesday workouts. Otherwise, you'd have got 10 reps or 11 reps, right? Now again, the questions. Why? Given that the duration was the same for each workout, why would the Friday workout be plagued with this issue? Well, allow me to pose yet another question. Let's go back to the sleep. If you sleep regularly to recover from the daily grind of life, how much extra time do you need to recover from the additional workouts, that workout grind, Think about it, because most people don't understand the functional relationship between the duration and intensity of their exercise programs and the absolute need to properly recover. Many actually fail to make the progress that they so desperately desire simply because they are not recovered. And it shows up easily when you're in the gym. Friday, the example we just used, that Friday was a clear-cut case of how you recognize you're not recovering. Because if you were recovering, that Friday workout would have been at the very minimum the same as the Wednesday, and preferably better. Again, here's what people miss about recovery. It takes time. It takes time to rebuild, to replenish, and to fully recover. And when you listen to the guru magic, oh no, you got to be in the gym 3 days a week, 5 days a week, every 72 hours. Whew. Allow me to illustrate this point with some more visual assistance. I really want to drive this point home with you. Here's what you should know about recovery. And I need your attention because every day is a whole body day. Now, exactly what do I mean when I say a whole body day? Well, recall from my previous discussion with you about the heart, the cardiac function. Remember how it was impacted by your workouts? As you review the video, your heart right now is pumping 4 to 5 liters of blood per minute. And when you exercise, it may very well increase to 7 or even 20 liters a minute. But this is where too many people miss the big picture. We must realize that our heart is not the only body part that is experiencing the full dynamics associated with the effects of the daily grind. Not to mention the dramatic effect compounding the daily grind with our many guru-directed extended marathon exercise programs. When you go to the gym, everything's involved. Right? Your liver, your kidneys, your bladder, your rib cage, your joints, your spine, your nervous system. Actually, every cell in your body is directly involved with your every action, including those marathon workouts. Literally, your entire body, every cell is involved with every aspect of the daily grind, and it is intrinsically involved with every trip to the gym or the fitness center. Your entire body is involved with every step on the treadmill. So why should we be concerned with those myriads of myths and the multitudes of this guru exercise programs? Well, I hope by now the problems are obvious. The bottom line is, following that advice, those mythical formulas, there's very little recuperation. And when you couple this with the deficiencies associated with most people's nutrition, the ability of the human body to sustain and regenerate all the cells in our body is greatly impaired. And we must remember that all of the recuperation and all of the nutrition must be in excess of our normal daily requirements. What you might need to get through the daily grind is not at all sufficient for the additional stress associated with your workouts, even if they're not a marathon. And of course, you will want to have quality nutrition. Now think about this for a moment. Here is yet another question where logic and reasoning comes in. When does the baby grow? Or another question might be, when does the baby benefit from all of its exercise and nutritional intake? Now, most of us realize that the baby does not grow while it's up running around cycling through a host of diapers. The baby grows, of course, when it's sleeping. And when it's sleeping, the baby can fully benefit from all of its previous exercise and nutrition. Now, here's the news flash, and this will probably be difficult for many to readily agree with, but I'm going to say it anyway. You do not grow in the gym. After all, if living in the gym, much less going to the fitness center, would allow us to attain the development that we desire, then we could just simply move our cot into the back room of the local fitness center. But sadly, that's not how it works. Recall our real gym statistics from the first part of the seminar? You know, the 0.5%. Now ask yourself, are you the 0.5% or the 99.5%? Or even a better question might be, which group would you prefer to be? Now, if you want to be that 0.5% that actually have notable results from all of your exercise and nutritional programs, then let me ask you yet one more question. When do you recover and grow? Well, it should be obvious, right? Not in the gym, but given the proper balance of exercise, intensity, and duration while in the gym or fitness center, coupled with the appropriate vital nutrition for you individually, literally the correct applied exercise and applied nutrition, you will soon have the results that you have previously been unable. Let's cut that. I'll go back to square one. 1, 2, 3. It should be obvious to you, right? not in the gym, but given the proper balance of exercise intensity and duration while in the gym or fitness center, coupled with the appropriate vital nutrition for you individually, literally, the correct applied exercise and applied nutrition, you will soon have the results that you have previously been unable to achieve. So remember this. Yes, the problems with all these myths and guru programs sprinkled in fairy dust is that people are almost always compelled to ignore common sense. Too many people hear this information, they buy into them, they believe them, they act upon them, they leave real science and biology in the trunk of their car, or at the very least in their gym locker. And as I've previously stated, and hopefully proven, the majority of fitness magazines and guru advice is based upon science fiction. They want you to believe that you can quickly transform from the left side of your green screen to the right side of your green screen simply by purchasing the latest edition of their greatest arm blaster or purchasing their latest and greatest synthetic product. Let's see if we can demonstrate how this science fiction process actually works so successfully. So work with me here for a moment. As you're watching this video, I want you to just flex a muscle. Or as many of you may have stated in your younger years, make a muscle. So go ahead, flex your leg or your arm momentarily. Now here's what some of you might be doing as I speak. Now, as some might be performing exactly what is pictured on the screen, the truth is, you cannot do what I just asked you to do. You see, muscles don't actually flex. Contrary to all that you have heard from the gym gurus, contrary to all that's been published in the Musclehead magazine hype, muscles very simply contract. Furthermore, you cannot confuse the muscle. It was created, it was designed to function in a contracted or relaxed state. It literally lengthens or shortens, but it does not flex. So now you can see how easy it is to be taken in with these myths. How we leave the science and the biology in the gym locker. So, too many people are overtrained. They suffer with nutritional deficiencies. They don't fully recover prior to going back for a subsequent exercise session. And as a consequence, they set themselves up for potential injuries. Now, that being stated, remember that you can do everything correctly and still suffer the setbacks from an injury. After all, we're not lifting Smurf balls here. We're lifting heavy weights. This is intense training. And even though my programs are relatively short in duration, they are really great in intensity. So injury, sadly, is always a possibility. Now, fortunately, none of my clients have yet to succumb to any. And my hope will be that anyone in the future enjoying these programs will also go through injury-free. But just be aware that you're lifting heavy weights. Okay? Now, in a few moments, I'm going to demonstrate this more clearly. Now, before we go deeper into the issue of these injuries, let's take a deeper look at this concept of functional isodynamics. Just what is functional isodynamics, applied exercise, and nutrition? Well, it's all about you. It's about your health. It's about your applied exercise. It's about your applied nutrition. It's really all about a more functional you. At this point, let's clearly define this concept. so that you get a very clear understanding of what functional isodynamics, applied exercise, and nutrition is really all about. Here it is, the printed definitions of functional isodynamics. But let's take these one line at a time so that we can get a better understanding of the depth of these terms and what they actually mean. For example, functional, having or serving a utilitarian purpose, capable of serving the purpose for which it was designed. Now, my applied exercise programs are designed to complement the way our bodies are designed. In other words, we don't have some bizarre programs that require you to hold or move a weight while simultaneously performing some other type of creative exercise. So, to improve you physically, we employ time-tested and proven techniques. Let me give you just a few examples to make this point stand out. To improve your legs, for example, we use squats and leg presses. They're very functional. If you want to work on your arms, bicep curls have been proven to be very functional, or bench press. Very straightforward, very functional. Now, the ISO portion of this conceptual name is actually a complex term. I derive it from the concepts of isometric, isotonic, and isolation. Isometric exercise, a form of resistance exercise. But you notice it's where the length of the muscle remains the same. So if you were to go into your house right there at the front door and stand in that door frame and put your arms at your side and then push outwards against the door frame, where your arms do not move, the length of the muscle does not change, but you're pushing with everything you got against that door frame. That's isometric. Okay. Now, isotonic, you notice you have muscle contraction or muscle movement. The length of the muscle is actually changing, as it would be for a bench press or a leg press, for example. Isolation, now, this is limited movement. A partial lift might be an example of that. So in the future, you might hear me refer to an exercise technique as an isolated functional movement, which might best describe an abbreviated or partial lift. And a functional isodynamic movement will better describe the exercise that incorporates any combination of these three elements, as my programs actually do. Now, the dynamics is describing the energy or that associated effective action that will be required to perform the various applied exercises. As you might recall from part 1, I described functional isodynamics as having dynamic resistance. Therefore, to overcome the dynamic resistance, you need dynamic energy, or more appropriately, explosive force to overcome this weighted opposition. In simple terms, you will need to generate a lot of force to lift or to overcome an opposing heavy weight or resistance. And as also mentioned earlier, functional isodynamics is stressful physical exercise. It's very intense, very short duration. Now, applied is pretty straightforward. It's scientific. Okay, we're outcome-based. We know this works. Exercise, that body activity that enhances or maintains physical fitness. Pretty straightforward. Now, the nutrition, the selection of food, supplementation, and the ingestion and assimilation is important by the body for the whole purpose of your health, facilitating, that cell maintenance and regeneration. You have to rebuild. But let's take a moment to investigate these last two terms in a little bit more detail, so I think you'll better appreciate this explanation here. The applied exercise is a series of specific and effective isotonic and or isometric exercises, somewhere between no movement and movement, right? It's isolated movements. It's a series because each of our programs have a series of lifts specific to your particular requirements. Now, these are timed isodynamic exercises, and they are performed with great force and energy. The applied nutrition. Here's where we're going to expand upon this concept of nutrition a little bit, because these are nutritional strategies. It's not like popping a pill. There's a strategy here with supplements if necessary to assist your body in the regeneration, the recuperation, the muscle development, and that overall functional health. Now, there's a very crucial key to making functional isodynamics work so successfully, and that is we actually only perform a one-set primary exercise. And I'm going to show you this in just a few minutes. Literally, we employ a very intense exercise for a very specific duration, a short burst of intense movement. Now, this allows you to focus on your strength, the strength training. Where we're going to target the specific muscle group, and in some exercises you will be engaging every muscle in your body. More importantly, you will always be using your core muscles. That's that 29 muscles located in the back, abdominal, and pelvis areas, and these are the foundation muscles for all movement. That's why functional isodynamics beats conventional cardio and cross-training, hands down. And it does it in a fraction of the time with less susceptibility for injury. And the bottom line, you'll get better results. In fact, notable results, not in years, but in as little as 90 days. And these are just some of the many benefits. Now, previously, I illustrated how effective and or how successful many of my earlier programs were, but now you might want to know, does this work? Does the functional isodynamics that I'm presenting to you work? So to illustrate the point, first allow me to present a typical or traditional muscle head guru type exercise program and compare it to a typical functional isodynamic program. Now, this will help you visualize the notable differences. And second, I will illustrate a typical functional isodynamic training program and its results. And third, I'm going to illustrate the program that was recently completed by a new or novice lifter, just to better emphasize the potential that functional isodynamics has for everyone. So let's begin here. Let's take a moment and look at a recent typical results, if you will, that people have received from employing these applied exercises. As the viewing audience, you can take what you see on the overhead here as the traditional sider example. Crap. Let me get a drink of water, clear my throat. Okay, let's try it again. One, two, three. Well, let's take a moment and look at recent or typical results that people receive from employing functional isodynamics, applied exercise, and nutrition. Now, as the viewing audience, you take what you have seen in your fitness centers and gyms as the traditional side of this example. In other words, I'm going to present an actual workout program that was performed by an experienced lifter. But if you have similar results in your programs, throw those in here and you judge, you compare what you have seen in the past or in your programs with what I'm about to show you as results from functional isodynamics. Now, to start with, I mentioned previously the concept of measuring. As I present the following information, you will quickly try it. 1, 2, 3. Now, I mentioned previously this concept of measuring. As I present the following information, you will quickly see both how easy it is to measure your results, and you will soon understand why it is so very important to your being successful in your exercise program. We will compare one of our previously identified guru exercise programs with functional isodynamics. Now, the typical program is 90 minutes. And as we did in our previous example, we will be calculating the amount of weight lifted and the number of repetitions performed, the intensity, relative to the amount of time, the duration for the workout. Here's what it looks like. For example, we do the leg press. Now, these were exercises that were actually performed by an experienced lifter. 300 pounds, 8 repetitions for 3 sets. And you do the math, and you come up with 7,200 pounds moved or lifted. Now, we're going to do it again with the toe press and the lat pull and the deadlift and the shrugs, the bench press and the curl. And then when we finish that, we'll add that all up to 28,200 pounds lifted in 90 minutes. And that breaks down to 14.1 tons of weight in that 90-minute period of time. Now, hopefully at this point, you will see why I previously presented the information on just how stressful these long duration, these marathon exercises were on your heart. Now, these are real numbers. In the bottom line, the actual results of the intensity and duration of this typical workout: 313 pounds of weight lifted for every minute in the gym. It bears repeating. This marathon workout lasted for 90 minutes. Now, let's look at a typical functional isodynamics workout. As I mentioned earlier, there are many different exercise programs associated with functional isodynamics. So for simplicity, we're using a typical strength program. And as we use the same weight multiplied by the repetitions to determine the amount of weight lifted. So we're doing the leg press. And then we go to the toe press. And then we'll do the lat pull and the deadlift and the shrug and the bench. Now here on this functional isodynamics program, we're not calculating in any curls. So we're leaving off one exercise compared to the traditional one. Now, this program was actually performed by an experienced weightlifter also, as was the previous example. But notice the total weight lifted was 101,330 pounds. Again, less the dumbbell curl. Keep in mind that functional isodynamics is stressful physical exercise, but don't panic. Very soon you will see how even the novice exercise enthusiast can have these same powerful results. And moving on, the functional isodynamic strength workout yielded 50.7 tons or 18,424 pounds per minute in the gym. Now let's look very quickly at these numbers side by side, shall we? All right, let's do some comparison. The guru exercise to the typical functional isodynamics. And reflect upon your own experiences and try to see just how your programs might fare in this comparison. Okay, we're at 28,000 to 101,000. We're at 14 tons relative to 50 tons. We're 313 pounds and 18,000 pounds. Now, here is where the results can really catch you off guard. Recall the number of times that I've stressed the crucial need to balance intensity of exercise with duration of exercise, those short bursts of explosive energy. Well, as you can clearly see by comparison, the functional isodynamic program cut. Now, here is where the real benefits show up. Recall the number of times that I have stressed the crucial need to balance the intensity of your exercise with the duration of your exercise. You know, those short bursts of explosive energy? Well, as you can clearly see by comparison, the functional isodynamic program is more intense than that of the traditional program. But the added functional and dynamic part of my program is the duration. This functional isodynamic strength workout was only 5.5 minutes in duration. Again, recall the words, short bursts of intense exercise. Hopefully you can now begin to see how this concept can help you not only achieve your desired goals, but at the same time reduce your exposure to the many cardiac issues attributed to the traditional marathon-type exercise programs. Now let's see another illustration of how this program develops over time. Here's a recent strength program that I completed. What you see here are my actual results. Now, if you notice far left corner, the first workout, my workout was 46.5 tons. I did the math, and that's what I came up with. I went to the gym a week later, 50.7 tons. Week later, 45.2 tons. Now, why did it go up and then drop? Well, reflect back on our previous example of the Monday, Wednesday, Friday routine, where we lifted a certain amount of weight on Monday, we went Wednesday, we lifted more, and then Friday we lifted less. Well, what was the reason? Well, the reason's right here. When you start moving those intense weights, even though they're a short period of times, you need to recover. And that showed that I did not recover. On that third workout, I went into that gym, if you will, even though a week apart, consider it like that Friday workout. And I was unable to perform weight and reps. So if you notice between the third and fourth bar in your picture, I extended the amount of time to recover. And the weight started going up and up and up until that second arrow. Now that second arrow, sadly, was actually an injury. So in my defense, I am also the chief object of experimentation over the years of my program development. Consequently, I often test the limits as well as the relative value of every program, as I'm illustrating here. So let's look at the facts. Let's get the highlights of this 90-day program. The initial lift, right there, we just discussed it. But here's the final lift in comparison. Now, it's important that we realize that the only variable in this program was the weight. In other words, I lifted in the fitness center on the same machines, using the same equipment, keeping the exact same time or duration for every lift throughout the entire 90 days. So the only change that could exist was either from the number of repetitions performed or the amount of weight lifted, or to increase the amount of weight for the specific exercise for the same time. That's it. The only variable, not the time, but the weight or the repetitions relative to that weight. Again, compare the program facts, and let's compare it to maybe what you might be doing or have done. This will allow you to acquire an even better understanding of the many benefits of functional isodynamics, applied exercise, and nutrition. You notice here in that 90 days, I walked into the gym 9 times. I know people that go to the gym that many times in a week. And at that time, 6.9 hours. From the time I opened the gym door, walked in, did my workout, walked out, closed the door behind me, was 6.9 hours in 90 days. Now here's going to be the real clincher. 47.5 minutes. That's the total time that I was actually pushing the weights, or pumping iron, as they say. 47.5 minutes within 90 days. Most people that I speak to at the fitness centers, they do more than that every day. Again, keep in mind that the connection between cardiovascular issues and marathon exercise programs, intensity and duration, that's the key. Now, for me, on that particular program, I gained 1.3 pounds of muscle. The other people that were working the program gained 5. Has something to do, I think, with my age. But that's neither here nor there. Let's look at this next one. Let's take the pre and post totals, just to give us a biomarker, if you will. Prior to beginning this 90-day program, I did a maximum isodynamic movement for each of these lifts. And I would lift the weight and hold it for 10 seconds. Isodynamic lift. I did this as a simple benchmark for my own use, just to measure progress, if you will. So here we see the starting point. Leg press, 1,480 pounds for 10 seconds, for example. Now, 90 days out, after 9 trips to the gym, I was able to do, using the leg press as an example, 1,300 pounds for 67 reps. Now, what you see here is that the duration again was held constant in each and every exercise. All of the changes came from the intensity, or from the exercise and the amount of weight being lifted within that set period of time. And of course, on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see the little asterisks, because the injury did affect those particular lifts. So here are some of the benefits and the why. Why we only perform a one-set primary strength training exercise. If you noticed in these examples, we did leg press, and then we did bench press, and we did one set, not eight sets or 10 sets or 20 sets. And of course, in all those programs, we focus on a target group, legs, for example, leg press, and the core of the body, as well as every muscle in the body. And I will assure you that when you're pushing that kind of weight and holding it, every muscle in the body is engaged, versus the typical 8 different chest exercises or pound the chest into submission type programs. Now let's take this and run it out to 120 days, just so you can see that it just doesn't stop. Okay. Here in slide 1 is the initial isodynamic 10-second hold, which we've previously discussed. And we're going to compare this. The 90 days, we just went over those figures. There they are. But here you see in the 120 days, the progression. For example, on the leg press, where I was doing a 10-second hold on 1,480 pounds, now we're doing 60 reps. And it goes through all of them. And in the bottom of the lift, the deadlift, the shrug, and the bench, you'll see that the lift started improving again to show that I was actually overcoming that injury. So, how do these 120-day totals look like in comparison to program results that you might be familiar with? Let's break it down into more specifics here. You've seen these numbers before. This was the starting, the very first of the 120-day program. Okay, I got to stop it here. Control 1. Control. All right, let's start again here with this one, Jan. 1, 2, 3. Sorry about that. I'm giving another count. 1, 2, 3. So these totals, this that you're seeing here, was the initial lift at the beginning of this 120-day window. Oh, shit. Shit. All right, Jan, we're going to try to pick up here on part 2 here, part 2B. How's that? I'll start out here with 120 days. Oh, give me 2 seconds. Whew, shit, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Let's take a look at these 120-day totals and break them down just so we can get a better perspective here. Now, you recall the initial lift totals, first day, and then the 90-day totals we just reviewed. But here's the 120-day. Now, if you notice the initial lift at 45.7 tons, the 120-day was at 120 plus tons. That's over a 90% increase in strength. Bear in mind now, the only variable here is the amount of weight lifted, or the number of reps. Now, the total number of days I walked into the gym in 120 days was 11. The total number of hours from the time I opened the door of the gym, did my exercise, and left was 9.4. And you got to realize most of that time in the gym I spent moving weights from one machine to another, because the total amount of time that I was actually lifting the weight in 120 days was less than 1 hour. Again, I spent less time in the gym actually lifting weights in 120 days than the majority of the people spend in just 1 day. And I had an increase in strength of over 90%. Now, the results should speak for themselves, outcome-based, as I've stated before, with duration and time, that time that I use for each exercise being the constant. The only factor, again, that can change is the amount of weight that is moved. And given that there was over a 90% increase in the amount of weight lifted within the same period of time, the only way this could happen is if your strength increases. But you might ask, am I the only person that gets these results? Well, the results are available to anyone that wants them. And in this case, yes, females also get results. Cherie was frustrated with all the hype and no results from previous programs. Here's her starting day program. She wanted results. Now, a novice in the sense of functional isodynamics, but she had been in the gym prior to, and I'd actually hired fitness trainers and such to work with her. Like many people, though, she was obviously not getting the results that she wanted. The basic statistics on her are here before you. The body weight starting, the body fat starting, and at the end of the 90 days. So this is what she did. I'm going to show you her program now on the exercise portion of her program to get the results. Here we have her first day in the gym is 15.23 tons. And then she went to 14.6 and then down to 12. Now she stepped down. And the reason was there's a learning curve for some people. Learning to follow the program the way it's set up. Learning to do the lifts the way they need to be performed. So a little bit of a learning curve. Now, once she figured that out, if you notice her step progression, 16.83 to 17.79 and such, all the way up. To complement this applied exercise program that Cherie was on, she was also utilizing applied nutrition, specific nutritional strategies and supplementation that we've previously discussed to support her throughout this time frame. Now, let's break down her program into simple numbers, the 90-day facts, if you will. First, she is 51 years old. In these 90 days, she walked into the gym 9 different times. And the total amount of time she spent walking from the front door through the gym, doing her exercise, and walking back out the front door was 5.2 hours. Again, I believe that it's important to note that Cherie is not living in the gym, contrary to all the Musclehead magazine information. her total amount of time exercising, actually pushing the weights in 90 days, was 27 minutes. Again, the same exercises, the same time or duration constraints. The only part of her program that could change and did change was the amount of weight and the amount of time that she moved that weight within that specific period of time. In this case, her strength increased by over 74% in 90 days, or in 9 trips to the gym, or in 27 minutes of exercise. But here's a little more information to help you better understand and hopefully appreciate the full value of functional isodynamics, applied exercise, and nutrition. We're going to run her out through 120 days. Again, her initial lift was, as presented before, her 120-day total, 72.31 tons. Now, you're seeing here 10 workouts in 120 days, 30 minutes of exercise, 30 minutes in 120 days. Are you beginning to see the real power and value of these functional isodynamics programs? Remember, this is not 30 minutes each day for 120 days. This is 30 minutes of pushing weights in 120. Okay, cut. Oh, shit. I forgot where I started here. Let me go back one. Okay, 1, 2, 3. So what you have here are 10 workouts, 30 minutes of exercise. Are you beginning to see the real power and the value of these functional isodynamic programs? Remember, again, this is not 30 minutes of working out each day for 120 days. This is 30 minutes of pushing weights in a 120-day period of time. I think I said it again. Let me do a control function here. Oh, shit. Never mind. Let me go back up here. Let's try it here. Now, let's review her program and run it out for 120 days. As you recall, her initial lift was 15.23 tons on her first day in the fitness center. But here's her 120-day lift total, 72.31 tons. Now, that's 10 workouts, 30 minutes of exercise in 120 days. Are you beginning to see the real power and the value of these functional isodynamic programs? Remember again, this is not 30 minutes of working out each day for 120 days. This is 30 minutes of pushing weights in a 120-day period of time. That's a 130% increase in strength. That's why I call her Super Cherie. She had a whopping 130% increase in strength with 30 minutes of exercise. Now, given that she used the same equipment to perform the same exercises with the same time, again, the only element that could possibly change was the amount of weight. She lifted a measured 15 tons on her first workout. 120 days later, and given the same exact time to perform the same exact exercises, she was able to lift a measured 72 tons. Outcome-based results, wouldn't you agree? Now, let's see what these notable changes actually look like. Currently, Cherie is now into her size 2 skirt, and hopefully I'll have new images by the end of this seminar presentation. Let me ask you, does it work? Functional isodynamics has proven itself to be the correct mix of intensity and duration. and with the applied exercise is coupled with the applied nutrition, the results are very notable in 90 days. Now, there's a point of satisfaction or maintenance, a point of maintenance which I refer to. In other words, once you see in the mirror what you like, you simply maintain what's been working for you. You keep your current level of program. But here is something equally as important to what does work, and that's what does not work and why. Now, I refer to these facetiously as these poor techniques and injuries as Forrest Gump exercises. Not to pick on Forrest Gump, because I think his logic is very sound. And how to train around these injuries is, we'll just pick up that point right at the end. But let's take a few minutes to review these 3 points to gain a better understanding of just how these might relate to or even impact your current exercise programs. In the vast mix of today's modern exercise and nutrition theories and mayhem of myths, once you separate out the facts relative to functional isodynamics, applied exercise and nutrition, well, the entire house of science fiction and guru science collapses. Because most exercise movements are executed, excuse me, 1, 2, 3. Because as you realize, most exercise movements are executed in excess, both in time and rep, which we've harped on since the beginning. And the injuries, quite frankly, are a consequence of this type of action, the overtraining, the improper techniques, poor nutrition. Now, this being said, let us take a brief look at exercise-related injuries that I have alluded to earlier in this presentation. Let's look at these injuries that are relative to the realm of fitness training. Let's try and understand why these events might manifest themselves, and more importantly, how and why you should avoid them. Here we have the dynamics for the standard injury. Now, the bench press is a very safe exercise, and it's commonly used by everybody. However, the point of transition is the area that you want to focus on. The key to avoiding the injury in most bench presses movements is this area of transition. You know, where the people take the bar and they bring it down to their chest, and then they transition from bringing it to the chest to moving it upwards away from their chest. That's when the injury happens. And from the looks of it, the injury could be nothing less than substantial. Now, with the inclination for injury in the curl, again, an example for the transitional area, because that weight in your hands is fully extended away from you, and you're putting a tremendous amount of pressure on the connective tissues. Not that you shouldn't do them, just be aware that this is where that potential injury comes in. As with the bench press, the inclination for the injury is during that transition, as you lower that weight to the table and then reverse its movement. The potential for injury is always exacerbated when people use heavier and heavier weights to perform full range movements that involve this transitional process. And as I stated earlier, all too often, most people use way too much weight. Now, here is the Forrest Gump exercises. Just a few exercises that you might seriously consider eliminating, or at the very least, avoiding employing a full range movement on. The classic Forrest Gump exercise. There is tremendous amounts of pressure placed on the wrist, elbows, shoulders, connective tissues while performing this movement. To avoid the proclivity for injury, I would highly recommend that you avoid this particular exercise. Regardless, not only do I not perform this exercise, but it is not part of any functional isodynamic program. Behind the neck press. Oh, there's a tremendous pressure again exerted on the elbows, the shoulders, and the neck. Additionally, there's the seated version of this. The potential for injury is very clear. As previously mentioned, These are not part of our functional exercises. But there are people that swear by these exercises and choose to employ them. But you are subjecting yourself to injury, such as the acromioclavicular issues or the rotator cuff injuries. Now, this sumo deadlift is a very practical exercise. It's a very safe, relatively safe and sane, if you will, as is the standard deadlift. However, like any exercise, there is a right way, that technique, if you will, and a wrong way to perform it. And this is exactly how not to perform the deadlift. This is a picture-perfect way of, well, as you can see, there's potential injuries to every exercise. Lifting with correct technique and avoiding the transitional movements with heavy weights is a great place to start. Now, the squat's a very good exercise, but I would suggest that the placement of a board under the heels will not help you obtain your desired fitness goals any faster than just keeping your feet flat on the ground. Your back needs to be flat, your chin and head need to be up. Here's an almost picture-perfect example of the Olympic and power squat. Both techniques are clearly demonstrated, and if performed correctly, will yield great results. Now, if you're wondering why I said almost picture-perfect, well, take a closer look at the power squat. Now, the knees, the feet, the hips are in great position. The back is flat and the chin and head is up. But the bar could be a little lower on his back, bring him down over the traps. This would bring the center of the bar in line with the center of the line of drive from the lower squat position. However, with only 140 pounds on the bar, this picture technique will work, but it will not serve well to try heavier weights with the bar that high on the shoulders. However, if they're not performed correctly, well, the results are obvious. So be careful. Don't try to lift more than you are able. Not that anybody would ever try this, but just keep in mind that one underlying principle to exercise is that of progression. Learn to lift correctly and learn to increase the weight at the rate that your body can progress, not at the rate your ego can progress. Otherwise, you might experience some of these. Another way to avoid injuries in the fitness centers will be to avoid being too creative. And what do I mean when I say creative or creative workouts? I'm sure if you've been in the fitness centers for any period of time, you may have seen something that looks like what I call Forrest Gump creative exercises. Let's look at just a few so that you get a picture in your mind of what I'm talking about. Now, the problem with people when they get creative in the gym is not only that they subject themselves to potential injury, but they also subject innocent bystanders to injury also. So let's try to avoid that type of creativity. Be smart, be safe, and keep your programs focused on functional exercises. Now, in this example, it's important to note that a 225-pound bench press, as illustrated here, is a very impressive lift. It takes a lot of strength to move 225 pounds. But using a creative reverse grip to perform the same exercise will not add any improvements to your overall physique. It will, however, subject you to a greater potential for injury. So remember, don't exceed your limits. And I have no idea what this is. I guess you'll have to label this one yourself. Here's a whole series of why. Why be that creative? So don't go there, folks. Just don't go there. Keep your exercises functional. Functional workouts. Employ proven functional exercises in your future workouts. Avoid the creative workouts that are often seen performed in the gyms, as they will subject you and others to potential injuries. Now, as far as training around any injuries, there's a lot there. It's got to be based on many factors. For example, the type or extent of the injury. Was it a pulled muscle, a sprain, a tear, a separation, etc.? The location of the injury. Is it in your hamstring or a calf muscle? Now, one way that some have been able to continue training and avoid compounding their existing injury is to utilize a technique called partial lifts. Of course, some might need to take time off. Nothing wrong with that. At the very least, many have had to reduce the amount of weight for a specific exercise or exercises, and try to be patient and don't work through the pain. Remember, pain is a signal that you need to cease from your activity. Now, a quick review. Proper training and proper training techniques will only provide you with the greatest benefits if you are also addressing your vital nutritional requirements and allowing yourself the required time to sufficiently recover prior to your next trip to the fitness center. This brings us to the conclusion of part 2 in my series, Functional Isodynamics, Applied Exercise and Nutrition. Again, I appreciate your interest in my program, and I trust that this part was helpful for you also. In part 3, I will go into more detail as to how and why functional isodynamics works. And I will expand more on the actual mechanics, if you will, that what makes functional isodynamics work so powerfully. I will be explaining graphically the functional isodynamic curve, and I will be discussing the downside of not exercising, which is a major biomarker to a person's health. And also, I will be discussing more about your need for that vital cellular nutrition. Thank you again.